Hi, Sage Gia here, live and present. I'd like to introduce my partner and co-host, Mountain Man Mark here.
Hello.
And tonight, I have to admit that this is a redo because last week I had some technical difficulties. For those of you who didn't get a chance to get on the call, and those of you who were on the call, or those of you who didn't make it, we're recording it tonight. So it's going to be a redo from last week about addictions and how you can free yourself from certain lifestyle patterns, and while reprogramming your cells to a vibrant, more healthy cellular level with the memory of life. And we're going to touch upon that, but what we're going to get into tonight is a part of our book, which is titled Heal Your Whole Life and the 8 Essential Principles of Healthy Living. So tonight we're going to talk about our main principle that covers all the principles, which is first do no harm. And I'm going to have Mountain Man Mark here share some of his life science nutritional advice with you. And one of the reasons we decided to do this 9-segment webinar is to help those of you out there who are wanting to be supported by a natural living process, and those of you who are sovereign conscious beings looking to expand your life and get through this toxic world and the conditions that we have today that makes it very difficult to live naturally. It's not impossible, but it's more challenging than it was when we started out 35 years ago. And along the way, we gathered a lot of experience and information and ways of being able to live a more healthy, natural lifestyle without being too extravagantly expensive and without affecting your life in a very difficult way. So we've created some very practical ways of being with a natural lifestyle, and we've also found ways to help people learn to deal with addictions and move through them. For those of you who don't know my healing story, you can take a look at that on my YouTube channel, which is Sage Gia on YouTube, and see all the different diseases that I went through and how I was able to process through my own life through a spiritual journey as well as physical. And one of the things that I have found very helpful in my process is to integrate the actual spiritual essence of who I am with my physicality in a very practical way that supports living in these times. So we're going to do 8 segments. Actually, today would be the first of 9, but we're going to do 8 segments about how you can actually move through some addictive patterns. And I believe all of us have something that we're dealing with just because of our DNA dysfunctions that we come onto the planet with. And so we end up either overeating, over-drinking, smoking, or drugs, or whatever those addictions are, sexual addictions. They seem to create a negative lifestyle so that we're not able to get to who we are and our purpose in life. And it's extremely important to know who you are to be able to deal with your life. And so the first thing we're going to start talking about is that principle of first do no harm. Now, the truth be told, if we didn't do any harm, we wouldn't have addictions to begin with. But the stage is set, and we all have probably done some harm at some point in time. So we're going to address this addictive pattern and behavior cycle based on having done some harm. So I'm going to ask Mark to share with us his, knowing him for many, many years. He started out with a bit of an addictive nature, And I'm going to ask him, could you share with us some of the things that caused you to have a more difficult natural lifestyle based on your earlier addictions?
Okay. I realized at a pretty young age that I had an addictive nature. I was the type of kid that if there was an open bag of chips or candy or cookies in the house, I couldn't even think straight. Just had to finish it off. Fortunately, I have a very practical side, and this is the side that has been a protection for me against a lot of negative addictions. I never even considered it a possibility to have a smoking addiction or a drug addiction or even coffee. I knew at a young age that these were things that I would eventually want to quit, so I saw no sense in starting them. So my practical side really helped me a lot to counterbalance my addictive side. Now, I didn't do quite as well with alcohol. My father was a weekend alcoholic, and probably by the time I got to my mid-20s, I saw a need to completely cut that off because I could see myself going the same way. So I was able to nip that in the bud before that became too difficult. Now, food is a different thing. We have to eat a couple times a day, so that principle of just completely abstaining isn't quite as practical with food. And used to be, until I found a way to be very satisfied with a natural diet. I used to be very compulsive in my eating because there's so many foods that trigger off addictions. To no fault of our own, most people, the great majority of Westerners, have a lot of food addictions. And the reason for this is a lot of resources, a lot of time and energy has been put into making foods more addictive by scientists and chemists to serve the processed food industry. If you are a person looking to eat better and have a standard American diet, you're going to find yourself with literal withdrawal symptoms from the foods because they've been designed, that special balance of fats and oils and salts and flavor enhancers has been designed to keep you coming back, to give you cravings, and then the cravings form addictions. So we all have certain addictions there, and through a proper lifestyle, through a healthy diet, you can normalize your taste, you can normalize your desires with food, and you can get out of that cycle, that addictive cycle of food.
Well, I have to say, through my own experience when I was younger and was plagued from my own accord, as well as a few others in my life, but I had a very, very strong addiction to sugar. And I was a sugarholic. But what I found, and I had a few other little addictions, but that was my big one. But what I found was that these addictions actually led to a healing and spiritual crisis. And so based on the information I've been channeled, I understand the principles of how the body is the last messenger. And what we don't get on a higher level, the body will make us get it. Whether we go into that process of trying to understand what we are desiring, what we are really craving, to get to the purpose in our life, then we can heal. But if we don't do that, we often become more addicted and possibly more ill, and it could cause a great amount of harm leading to death. So I want to ask you, Mark, do you feel that any of your addictions led to a healing and spiritual crisis in your life?
Yes, I feel that my great desire not to be dependent upon things. There's this saying that since I was a kid was my favorite saying in the world, security lies not in the things a man possesses, but in the things he can do without. So I always felt a need to not be dependent on things. And this kept me away from addictions, and this even down to food. And it was my deep desire when I was in my 20s to not in the future be dependent on doctors and drugs, to pursue, to really investigate, to really put some time and some effort into some energy and make it the top priority in my life to figure out, well, how can I do this? When I looked around me, I saw people seem pretty dependent. The mainstream thinking was you depended on doctors and drugs for your health and well-being, and I didn't want to follow that route, so I looked for a different way. So it was my tendency toward addictions and my need not to depend upon things outside of myself that led me to a journey that's a much more fulfilling way of life for me, and takes care of my eating compulsions too. Sage was a sweetaholic, sugaraholic. I was a meataholic. I could live on, just a caveman with meat. I could live on just meat, eat meat 3 times a day and nothing else. But I know it's not good for you, so I don't eat meat. It kicks off too many cravings for me, and even though I loved it, I was never satisfied. I could eat 2 pounds of steak and another pound. I literally was that compulsive.
Well, a lot of people might dicker with you about meat's not good for you. Could you explain what you mean by, it's not good for you?
Well, actually, next week we're going to talk about food, and meat is
just a little bit in terms of addictions. You mentioned.
Well, for me, in terms of addictions, it just triggered everything for me. I'm eating a certain way now that's very satisfying. My cutoff switch is called an apostat. It works the way I eat. When I eat meat, it doesn't work. Within a week of eating a lot of meat, I'll literally get gout. Probably less than a week, probably 3-4 days. I'll have all type of physical symptoms. But there's quite a bit of information we'll share next week with why meat is certainly not one of the better choices for protein, especially factory farm meat, which is 90% of the meat, 95% probably, or more, that Americans eat.
One of the things that I found, when people look at our lifestyle, they think that, this is easy for you. We've had 35 years in living a certain way that supports our life. And it's not even just with diet, it's with nature, it's our thought processes, and it's in how we relate to life in general. We believe in putting the living back into your life. That's, Gandhi said, my life is my message. Our life is our message. We live how we believe and how we want to support and share with the rest of the planet. That doesn't mean anything's always perfect. We look for the best way to support us keeping the life in us and the living our life versus surviving life. And one of the things that I would recommend to start breaking the addiction is by aligning your will with the will of your purpose. And all that means is say what you want. Most people who are addicted to one thing or another usually focus on the addiction. They say, I don't want to eat this poorly anymore. I don't want to do drugs. I don't want to be this or that. I would say the first thing you need to start letting go of is the negative thought that you frame around your whole life. And that is, I don't want. And replace that with a very strong statement of what it is that you do want. And when I started, I remember I used to say, I don't want to eat all this sugar anymore. I don't want to feel so bad. It was all I don't want. And the first thing that shifted for me was, I want to be healthy. I want to feel healthy. So I would suggest the first thing to help you break the addiction is simply aligning your will with what you want. And I have another question for you, Mark. You ready?
Yes, I am, Sage.
Do you feel that some of your negative patterns around addiction was actually a gateway to your healing?
Well, yeah, if I didn't have the compulsive nature I did, I probably wouldn't have felt as strong a desire to seek out what I believed was a truth other than the mainstream thinking. I even took a speed reading course to study more quickly a lot of the ideas that were out there about health, which the speed reading course really didn't work for me because it didn't give me the comprehension I wanted. But so I failed purposely to get my money back. And I soon found out that all the reading was unimportant too, because the answers about the freedom of having health apart from the mainstream thinking of doctors and drugs was right there in front of me, so obvious and so simple, and the principles that Sage and I talk about are so simple that you don't have to worry about the hundreds of books and hundreds of diets, all different ideas. But yes, I would have to say that my compulsions, my tendency toward addictions definitely helped steer me into what I consider a way of life now, where I'm very comfortable with not being afraid of a lot of the diseases and infirmities that mainstream people at 60 have.
I've been channeled some information about DNA dysfunction, and just as we all have a DNA pattern, not only from inheriting our, mother's blue eyes or father's brown eyes or hair color or those physical things, but we also have a spiritual DNA pattern that we carry through this life. And just as we have a DNA dysfunction, that dysfunction actually leads us to the gift of purpose. And when Mark was talking about it being a gateway, if you start to align your will with what you want, that's the first step. It opens up your mind, which starts to lead you into what purpose are these addictions serving. Intuitively, you start to get responses from your higher self about why you're feeling the way that you feel. And your focus starts to become less and less on the negative dysfunctions and more around what that is trying to lead you to. So addictions and dis-ease can actually lead you into your purpose and your gift of why you're really living your life the way that you live. Mark, will you talk a little bit about that principle of first do no harm?
Yes. As I said, Sage and I, when we talk about health, we talk about these 8 principles. And these 8 principles really boil down to one single principle, and it's first do no harm. And this is the principle I like to talk about before we get into the 8 principles. But even before this, what I like to do with people is to get them into a different mindset, to help them shift their mindset from mainstream thinking about health and disease into a more practical, common sense, instinctive type of thinking about health and disease. To me, well, for most people, first off, this is very scary. If you told the average adult to drop their health insurance and be responsible for their own health, they would be scared to death. They would, people are afraid to lose their jobs because they're afraid to lose their health insurance because they depend on doctors and drugs. For me, this is the opposite of freedom. This is dependency. This is scary. And the reason this mainstream thinking, of all the ways mainstream thinking can be scary, this is one of the biggest ways for me. Because if you're thinking mainstream about your health, you're thinking statistically that 1 in 3 people living today are going to have cancer, and 1 in 3 people living today are going to have diabetes. And the kicker is that this isn't even, neither of these are the main culprit of death for Westerners. It's heart disease. So that's a pretty scary thing to think that your fate, that you can't do very much about, and your doctors pretty much tell you that these things happen to you and it's not your fault, it's a pretty scary thing to me to think there's nothing you can do about it except go get drugs, chemo, insulin, or have a heart transplant or a stent put in. That's frightening to me. But with Sage and I's practical approach to health, the first thing I do is I help shift a person's thinking into taking responsibility for their health and to see that that's a freedom. The fear of these three diseases we just talked about that more than 1 in 3 people will get in our lifetime, they don't even register on my fear meter. They just don't, because I think they're completely unnecessary. And even if everyone in my family lineage...
You mean they're unnecessary if you don't continue the addiction?
Yes, they're right. If you don't continue the addictions and if you don't create them, they're unnecessary. And even if you did create them, you can uncreate them through the right lifestyle. And they just don't register on my fear meter. And for me...
And by the way, he has no fear, so that might be...
No, I do. I have a fear of dependency. I have a fear of a lack of freedom. I have a fear of needing things that I don't think I should need, like doctors and drugs. So this type of lifestyle is a complete freedom for me, as opposed to scary. As a symbol, when I was 25 and I figured out some things, I sold it was an odd situation. I worked for a small company, so I was able to trade in my life insurance for a family of 6, traded in for the cash, and I never looked back, and I've never needed it in all those years. Anyway, getting back to this principle of first do no harm. Once you understand that to help you to understand that it's not scary to be responsible for your own health, but it's a freedom. It's important to have an awe and a wonder when you look at the capabilities of the human body, and to understand that its design is for health and it's not for sickness. And if you just learn this one principle, if you really sit with it and understand what it means to first do no harm, you will understand that if you can get out of your own way and not harm yourself with all these addictions and these sins against nature, then you will have health. It's the inherited design of the body. That was Hippocrates that said that, the father of medicine, by the way, and the Hippocrates and the great philosopher of about 2,000 years ago, I think. Correct, Sage? Mm-hmm. He said, "First, do no harm." And a second thing that he said that I really like is, illnesses do not come upon us out of the blue, but we create daily sins against nature, and when enough of these sins have accumulated, illness will come upon us. And I always tell people, if you take these 2 principles and you write them down and you put them on the refrigerator and you ponder them and you meditate them, you are well on your way to understanding a better way of health than 90% of the people have the faintest concept about. So Hippocrates, the father of medicine, the great philosopher, he did not believe that we were victims, that sickness was just something that came upon us, that we had to be one of the 1 in 3, that we had to worry about this. He believed that we created disease, that we created illness by doing harm, by committing sins against nature, by committing, in his mind, sins against our body. Now, again, I have a deep conviction that I am responsible for my health, and I have a deep conviction that I create my own health, and I have a deep conviction that my body, and almost everyone's body, is an incredible miracle of design, a healing, regenerating, rejuvenating machine that's 24 hours a day, every second of the day, doing just this, healing and regenerating and renewing itself. When you look at how the body starts out, it starts out with a single cell, 1 cell. Now this cell replicates until it becomes 100 trillion cells. Well, that's a lot of cells, 100 trillion. A trillion is a bigger number than most people that aren't mathematicians can really grasp a hold of. 100 trillion is almost beyond comprehension if you're not a mathematician. Now, these 100 trillion cells, each of these 100 trillion cells consists of 100, each cell consists of trillions of atoms. So that things are so infinitesimally complicated that if things wanted to go wrong, we couldn't stop it from going wrong. We'd have no control over it. Back to the single cell. It not only replicates into 100 trillion cells strong, it develops very specific systems in order for the body to operate. It creates a pulmonary system, a respiratory system, a lymphatic system, a neurological system, a skeletal system, a muscular system, all extremely different organs. So it doesn't just replicate itself. There's the intelligence, the innate intelligence in that first single cell, the blueprint of all these systems and all this design and all this incredible genius stuff going on. And every single cell is not some simple thing. It's a tiny thing that literally, I compare it to a miniature New York City. We have 100 trillion of these miniature New York cities that instantaneously respond to the brain to do whatever it needs to do, to form a blister, to heal a scratch, to create a cough, a fever, a sneeze, a cold, a flu, all intelligent body functions, all the limited processes. And just instantaneously and with complete synchronicity, it's able to do this without any effort from our part. So back to these cells, every second of your life, 2 million cells die and have to be recycled and renewed and recreated. 2 million every second. That's just beyond comprehension. And this goes on again outside of your consciousness. We have 100,000 miles of blood vessels. We have 100 billion neurons in our brain. The list goes on and on about the incredible miracles of the body, but in the end, you're left with the thought that the body is designed for health.
And healing.
Yes, it's designed, if you can just understand how to get out of your own way, it's going to treat you well. It's going to be this incredible vehicle to get you around without a lot of problems. We create the problems. We cause the problems. Usually disease is a choice. It's a choice of lifestyle. And health is simply choosing differently and choosing to have habits and have addictions that are positive addictions versus negative addictions. I would say I still have addictions, but there are addictions toward good food, live food, healthy food, to being outside. I'm literally addicted to being out in fresh air and sunshine. I get antsy if I don't, and those are positive addictions. So we're going to develop habits and patterns anyway. So let's just focus on developing habits and patterns and addictions that serve us and don't destroy us. So again, back to that first principle, first do no harm, taking responsibility for your health. It's easy and it's not scary. Once you look at the body and spend a little time with how incredibly designed it is and how it's our birthright, it's our way of being to be healthy and to not have sicknesses. So we simply have to stop creating them, and that's what doing no harm does.
I stated earlier that one of the first things you have to do is to let go of the negative thought patterns that you create and align your will. And the second thing that's necessary is to be responsible for the vehicle that houses your spirit. And just as if you purchased a brand new expensive car, you wouldn't think about putting oil in the radiator or water in the oil container. You would study, you would learn whatever it is you have to do to take care of this expensive brand new car. Well, the body, as Mark said, I'm not going to get into the trillions of New York City cells and all of that. I'll just put it very simply. Just the innate intelligence of the body in and of itself, it knows what to do for you. You don't have to work for it. All you need to do is fuel it with the proper essence of what it needs. And all that means is learning about that if you don't already know. And if you do know some things and you still have some addictions, there are people who can help you learn more about that. That's what our retreats are about, whether they're in-home or group retreats. We help people to understand the intricate aspects of life that are affecting them in this time in history. And it also, the third thing is you have to really consider the environment that you're living in, what it's doing to you, whether it's work and a lot of stress, or relationship stress, or what kinds of food you're buying or eating. You have to look at the entire environment that you've created and take an assessment and a step back and say, is this harming me or is this helping me? It's really that simple. And once you start to move into a more positive consciousness about working with the innate intelligence of your body, you're not fixated on worrying about dis-ease and needing to run and get a shot when you have a simple common cold. Because the truth be told, when you start to understand the basic natural principles of healthy living, you start to support your body in helping you, which ultimately supports your mind and your spirit. Anything else you?
Yeah, a couple quick things. First, I
Doesn't
believe.
have to be quick.
Okay, I believe I'm a spirit being having a physical experience in this physical body. I believe the greater essence of me is spirit, but what I'm aware of in this physical body is my physical experience. Most people probably have 10 or 12 cars in the course of a lifetime. Our bodies are the vehicle for our souls, and we get one during this life. If you were told you were only going to get one vehicle, you're 20 years old and you get your first car, you're going to take really good care of it if you know you can never get another car. And this is the only vehicle we're going to have on our stay here during our entire life. So you get one body, you might as well take care of it. It just doesn't make sense to abuse it. It doesn't make sense to abuse it with silly addictions that really, once you get rid of them, you're happier without the addictions than you are with them. I also like to liken your body to a house. There's a saying, if you don't, your body's like a house. It's where you live. If you don't take care of it, where are you going to live? Where else are you going to live? You can't do like a hermit crab and just crawl out of it and go into another one. Also, I'm losing my train of thought here. Okay, I'll defer to you.
Oh, great. Did you want to finish your sentence?
No, that was it. Just about the importance of taking care of your body and showing it some respect and having some regard for it, as opposed to the great majority of the people that they eat as though they're trash cans. They live as though they've got bodies of concrete and they can't hurt them. And to me, it's incredible that the body endures as much as it does. When I look at the average lifestyle of the average person, I'm amazed that there isn't more sickness. I'm amazed that 9 out of 10 people aren't getting cancer, and 9 out of 10 people aren't getting heart disease. It's amazing to me. And one more thing is just about health. It's, of all the priorities you can set in your life, good health is, for me, one of the most sensible. Because what's more important? What rich, wealthy man, what billionaire wouldn't give every penny he had for good health if he hits a point where he can't enjoy anything because he doesn't have health? It affects everything in your life. It affects the enjoyment, the quality of your life in every way if you let your health deteriorate to a point where you have a chronic disease and you're in pain. It affects your mental, it affects your mind, it can affect your spirit, and that you can feel more disconnected from your spirit because your health is so poor. It can break you down.
As a medical intuitive, in the years that I've worked with people, I've always said the body's the last messenger. And one of the things that I've done in my work, and I do, is I read the energy field of people to see where there are discomforts or dis-ease in the different bodies. And what I've observed over the years is how the body actually sends you the message, even the spiritual message, and even the messages around what you need to do to shift your thinking and your mind based on the particular dis-ease it picks up on. And one of the things that I find very interesting is that, one of the metaphysical meanings behind the body is it's related to a car or a house. And so what I found, when people start to see certain things going on with their car or their house, even for myself, I pay very close attention because it's usually a signal of what's actually going on in your body. There's messages all around us. And even if you don't consider yourself very intuitive or, having a sixth sense, we all do. It's a matter of how developed it is. We all know when we're feeling not well. We all know when something's shifting. We may not know exactly what it is. Even when I did back office nursing, I used to take the history of the patient and look at the objective and subjective findings. And a lot of times, the doctor bases his findings on a lot of the information the patient gives him. So in order for a patient to give information, they have to be aware of, this started happening around this time and this started happening around that time. So the body is constantly sending messages way before we start to get really sick. What happens is, because of our addictions and our focus on the negative processes of life, we ignore them. We keep trying to survive. We keep trying to keep up with all the toxic waste coming in and around us, whether it's through the mind, the body, or the spirit. Now, I want to say, once we're at a point where we're strongly addicted to something, which a lot of people are, it's hard to break that cycle. And why? First of all, when we look around us, you just go in a grocery store, a regular grocery store, unless it's Whole Foods. And even some of these grocery stores have some processed things. But when most people just go shopping for their family for the week, just about every aisle in that grocery store is loaded with toxins, through boxed foods, all kinds of things, chemicals, preservatives. It's like you have to read the ingredients, you have to know what you're really looking for. But you understand this, the world has been set up in a way now that you are surrounded by things to create addictions. So know that for number one. And when you know that, you start to pay attention to what those things are. You can start simply by aligning your will with the process of, I don't want to overload my body with chemicals and or preservatives. That's a very basic thing you can do, because it also starts to change the molecular structure in your brain processing and what your body has to unload on a daily basis. So the purpose in us talking about this is not to say, it's going to happen overnight, it's quick, it's easy, our life has been easy. Our life has not been that easy, but what has become easier is living more naturally. We don't suffer as much, and we now understand a lot of the principles that we teach that can actually keep you out of harm's way, out of your own way, so that you can be the most you want to be in your life, and also for the people that you love and sharing relationships with. So I really want to hit home about first, do no harm. Look around you and look at where you are doing harm. It's easy. It's easy to see that. Would you say that?
Yeah, I would say that. It's a common sense principle, practical application of common sense. I'd just like to add too that a healthy lifestyle can look difficult to a person with a lot of addictions, in the same way that a person with a heroin addiction looks at a person that has a family and a job and spends time with his family, and that can look difficult to maintain that homeostasis. For a person that, to me, it's difficult. It's a difficult way of life to party late into the night on alcohol, and then to wake up and to feel bad, and then to need cigarettes throughout the day, and to be looking for them and purchasing them, and then to be at work and have to go out somewhere to smoke, and to have all these negative health conditions because of it. To me, that's a very difficult lifestyle. It's a simple lifestyle when you don't have those needs and those cravings pulling at you all the time, when basically you have a feeling of well-being and poise because you don't have all these cravings pulling at you. It is a transition, in the same way that for a couch potato to become someone that's physically active and moves his body, that's a transition. But in the end, he's going to be happier in the lifestyle where he's moving his body than he was where he was sitting on the sofa all the time. So living healthy is a transition, and it takes a little time, it takes a little effort, and it might even take some symptoms when you're breaking away from different types of addictions. But in the end, it's an easier way of life, and it's a more rewarding way of life. And anybody looking in that thinks it's difficult, it's because you haven't tried it. If you've done both, you have the experience that it's an easier way of life, living a healthy life. It's more, don't do stupid things than it is, you have to do this and you have to do that. If you want to be a surgeon or a psychiatrist or an Olympic medalist or a lawyer in a law firm, get partner, there's a lot of things you have to do. You have to spend a lot of hours and years and intense passion achieving those things. But to be healthy, you basically just have to live your life with the practical common sense and not do a lot of stupid things, and put a little effort into planning your meals and making good decisions instead of bad decisions. But those decisions become easy once you've made that adjustments, once your tastes have changed, tastes in all things, even tastes in entertainment, healthier things versus addictive things. So, and personally, I find it to be an easier lifestyle, but not initially. Initially, there is an effort to be put forth and a transition to go through.
Well, when you say stupid things, that's not to do some stupid things. The unfortunate thing about your comment is that the world has been set up in a way now that most people live unnaturally, and the very basic common sense things that we knew from 35 years ago, and our great grandparents knew and how to live, have been a lost art. So a lot of people that I've talked to don't even understand what some of these harmful things are. They don't think. I was in the grocery store a month ago, and a woman was in front of me, and she had these big liters of sodas, and one was like a bluish purple color, and one was yellow, and what was the other one? Orange.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it in my life. And I asked her who these were for, and she said her children. And I kind of gasped under my breath, not in front of her. And she didn't. She said they really like it. She said, oh, they really love this, so I get this for them. But she, when you say stupid things, she didn't have a clue that this could be harmful. And I think because a lot of people think if it's in the grocery store or people are able to sell it, it can't be that bad for you. But what I'm saying is most people have to start somewhere. And the first thing to start with is understanding that you are living in a world that has been plaguing us with foods and lifestyles that creates addictions. And a lot of the clients I've dealt with that have had some severe addictions, the one thing they all have in common that they say to me, they don't say, oh my God, I'm glad I started smoking when I was 14 years old. You know, I know a medical doctor who started smoking when he was 6 years old. His grandfather taught him. And he, even though he teaches health, he still has that addiction to cigarettes. And so a lot of these people don't say, oh, I'm happy I have this addiction. They're saying, and a lot of them have healthy parts in their lifestyle, but the one thing they all have in common, and they say, is, I just wish I could kick this. And so what we're saying is, when you use the principle of first do no harm and you start to apply some very basic things, like I said, starting with your will, aligning your will with what it is you do want, which is, if it's health, then say that. And what happens on an intuitive level and a conscious level is things start to shift and the universe starts to open up channels for you to be guided in a way that you wouldn't have been able to on your own. And the one beautiful thing about first doing no harm and supporting your body is that when your body is freed up of addictions and toxic waste, it takes you on a higher journey. It is really a servant to the temple, the spirit that you house that has the higher knowledge. So just that in and of itself, knowing that, wow, if I can clean up this, that was so meaningful for me when I was able to start moving away from my addictions and my poor lifestyle, and I started to feel my essence. I became more empowered. I became more conscious of the level of responsibility that I had in maintaining that. And that didn't make it feel so difficult to me. That made me feel like, wow, look at what happened for me without the drugs, without the surgeries, without all those things that we become enslaved to by holding on to our addictions. So I would say honor your body as a temple, because it really is. It really wants to serve you. It's like Tom Cruise said in the movie, what's the name of the movie?
Jerry Maguire.
Oh,
Help me, help you.
Jerry Maguire, I know the saying, help me, help you. You know, that's what your body's saying. Help me, help you. And the first thing we can do is start letting go of the harm. And it could be a step-by-step process. And I promise you, you will start to move yourself inch by inch, yard by yard. You know, you will start moving yourself away from an addictive thinking pattern, which ultimately leads to, you know, a physical pattern. And anything else you want to say about that? Because I'm going to offer a couple of simple tips for this week for people to implement that might be helpful.
No, you've covered it.
A couple of simple tips. You know, there's lots of different types of paths for nutrition, supplements, and there's a lot of things out there. I, base a lot of my principles on just basic whole food, natural living, and a consciousness towards Mother Earth, who I believe is the greatest physician, and allowing the energy of Mother Earth to help support and enliven us. But some of the things that I would suggest are based on some of those four elements, which is water, fire, which is sun, and the earth, and, I'm forgetting one, wait a minute. Water, sun, earth, and, oh my goodness, how could I forget the four elements? Okay, I'll come back to that. But one of the things I'm going to suggest...
Air.
Air. One of the things I'm going to suggest is we used to be a higher percentage of water when we ate and lived better, but now a lot of people are saying, most humans are, 70 to 75% water. And it's the water that really helps us purge toxins or keeps us holding on to toxins. So the more water, pure water that you drink, it will help lessen those toxins and help purify your body more. So it's not just a fad of drinking water. It's actually a really incredible support system to you helping beat your addictions. So I would say find yourself the best source of water supply that you can, whether it's from a good spring or, some people who might sell good spring bottled water or a great system in your house. But do the best you can in terms of finding the best water you can and increase your water intake. Even if you just add 8 ounces more a day initially starting out, and then you increase that. When I first started out on my journey, I actually hated the taste of water. And now it's very important to me to make sure I drink a lot of water because it hydrates me and it also flushes out the toxins that we get on a daily basis, whether we eat them or not. Mark and I have implemented a fast day every Monday, and that really helps to unload our bodies, whether it's fasting with water or you just do a juice fast or you do a broth liquid kind of intake, or you start to that particular day, whatever day is good for you, for 24 hours you eat less meat or you eat no meat, or you eat you take away something that's created a lot of toxins in your life. But take at least a day where you give your body a rest from all the things that it can be inundated with in the environment. And the other thing that I would suggest is start moving your body. Whether it's you start out with the light exercise where you can create a program that works for you, whether it's stretching or strength training or anything to get your body moving, because it's extremely important it's one exit channel for toxins to be released. So even if you have a smoking addiction or another kind of addiction, just by moving your body can help you eliminate some of those toxins that are being stored up. I would also suggest start doing at least a green juice every day, or take some kind of chlorophyll tablets. That helps to restore minerals and support toxins in your body. And a very simple thing is apple cider vinegar, like Bragg's raw apple cider vinegar or Spectrum. A tablespoon in 8 ounces of water will not only help the digestive system, but it helps to purge you. So these are just a couple of basic things for relieving toxins. And when we come back on the next segment, we'll be talking about foods, the addictive aspects of food, what it does for you, the types of foods you could. Do you want to share just a little bit about what we'll talk about?
Well, I'm not giving nothing away. Yeah, next week we'll just be talking about the importance of it. It's one of the 8 principles, what you build your body with. And it's such a simple principle to make a connection to connect the dot from health to what you're eating. It's your construction material for your body. 2 million cells a second die. What's your construction material to rebuild 2 million more cells? Well, I think it just makes sense to use good construction material, which is your food. Your energy comes primarily from oxygen, but your construction material for your cells comes primarily from your food. That's your number one source of, exogenous nutrition. So I highly recommend putting some thought into, okay, what are my best choices for construction material? What are my best choices in food? And again, there's hundreds of books on this, thousands of books, hundreds of diets. How do you not get overwhelmed? When I started, I was very overwhelmed. That's why I took the speed reading course. I was so overwhelmed. And then I got still and I listened to my instinct and my gut and I observed nature. And then I figured a lot of things out. And that's what we'll be sharing with you, how you can know without taking an intellectual approach to it. If you take an intellectual approach, you could be years studying all the different possibilities of which diets are best, because they all have scientific backing, because you can twist statistics and science. So we can give you a more common sense, simple approach to know exactly how to start today as to what you should be eating and what type of diet you should have.
There's a saying, I'm sure most of you have heard of that quote, you are what you eat. And I know that to be true because, we studied life science nutrition, and where our focus is anything that brings life. And so we promote a high enzyme lifestyle, because when you inundate your body with life and live foods, it helps to support the body and its innate intelligence in doing what it needs to keep you alive, healthy, and strong. So on that note, we're going to end tonight. And thank you for joining us. And if you want to follow us, we're on some of the social media like Twitter and Facebook. And you can look at our www.powerlivingretreat.com website to learn more about what we do and what we're doing here in the rainforest of the Dominican Republic, and how you can start moving yourself away from an addictive nature into your true nature. Have a good night. Ciao.
Good night.